All right, guys. Today we're going to try and tackle the atmospheric cells that come up in GCSEs very commonly. They're probably one of the more difficult things that come up in the exams. So take your time with this. Again, it's a geographical process, so think of it in steps, but also know that your language, those tier 3 geography words that will flash up on the board, are so important to what we do here. All right? So obviously, I've spent some time thinking about, well, why do kids struggle with this? I think there are some reasons that we need to get into. First of all, we need to know how air reacts when it's heated. We know from life that when we see a cup of tea, we see the steam rising off of it. So we know just from life that warm air rises, okay? We also know when we open a freezer and we see the air sinking, we also know that cold air sinks, okay? That is absolutely essential. If you don't understand that, you won't understand this whole process at all. You've got no chance. We call this areas of low pressure. When air rises, it's called low pressure. When air sinks, it's called high pressure. Again, the weight of the air is pushing down, it's high pressure. You need to know the effects of this. When it rises, what we experience is condensation. Condensation leads to precipitation. So whenever we say an area of low pressure, you should really be thinking about rain. The opposite happens with high pressure. It creates clear skies, okay? Obviously doesn't create the sun, but it creates clear skies. So a lack of precipitation. Get your head around that, and you're halfway there. So, let's talk about the atmospheric cells. We need to know that the sun emits solar radiation. Don't say sunlight, solar radiation, much better. Now, the equator. The equator is pointing directly at the sun, so it receives a high concentration of solar radiation. Our poles are facing almost away from the sun, and so they receive a low concentration. So we have a high concentration of solar radiation at the equator. That's why the equator is always 30 degrees every single day, okay? While at the poles, temperatures can get as low as minus 50, okay? So what happens is Earth is trying to move energy from the high concentration to low concentration. So if you can make a link to physics, it's diffusion. Earth is trying to get to room temperature, but never actually does it, okay? One of the main ways it tries to do it is through atmospheric cells. So, how do we get energy from a high concentration to a low concentration? Well, what happens is because the equator is so hot, because the land is so hot, it heats the air. The air rises, okay? And we call rising air low pressure. That low pressure creates precipitation. So let's stop and let's think. If we have lots of precipitation and we have a high concentration of solar radiation, that is why we find rainforests all along the equator, but it's perfect for photosynthesis, okay? However, as it rises, it's getting further and further away from the very thing that heated it up, which is the surface of the Earth. So it gets cold. It gets cold and it sinks, okay? Again, it gets cold and it sinks. When it sinks, as we know, what do we call it when it sinks? I'm sure you're all shouting out at the video. We call it high pressure. Okay, so when air sinks, high pressure. So, basically what we've just seen is the formation of the Hadley cell. But here, the air is sinking. It's an area of high pressure. As we see, high pressure creates clear skies. Okay, so 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south you find the world's deserts because there's a lack of precipitation. Think about this, the Sahara Desert. Think about California, Texas. Think about the Gobi Desert in China. Okay, parts of India as well, deserts. Okay? But then what happens is we need to complete this. Because it's sunk again, the same process happens again. It gets close to the surface of the air and the warm air rises. Okay? Like so. Then we have the formation of our second cell. Okay, so think about plant cells. They're contained, right? Atmospheric cells are contained. You have to complete them. So here is the feral cell, Hadley, feral, and polar. It's going to be our last one. So again, the air rises as it's sunk and got close to the thing that's heating it, which is the surface of the Earth. And guess what? So then that's an area of low pressure, precipitation. Well, guess what we're over now? We're over Northern Europe. Okay? That's why England, the UK, Northern France is a very rainy part of the world. Okay, receives the large amounts of precipitation. Southern parts of Africa too. So then we have to kind of finish it off with the last pole. It's getting a bit messy here. The diagram's getting a bit small, but it should be here for it. All right, okay. Happens. Again, the same thing happens. The air sinks. It is warmed. And that is why we have our final pole, which is the polar. And again, so we have an area of high pressure in Antarctica. And that is why Antarctica is the true cold desert. It's one of the driest places on Earth, if not the driest place on Earth, okay? Because it's an area of high pressure. You can be in Antarctica and you're looking at pure blue sky and surrounded by snow. And that's because it's freezing and the snow that falls there never actually melts. This is the atmospheric cells, remember? It is complicated, but if you break it down, you understand the effects of rising air and sinking air, high pressure, low pressure. You understand that there are 3 cells, Hadley, feral, and polar. The lines of latitude being 0 degrees, equator, 30 degrees north and south, and the last one is 60 degrees. Then you're pretty much good, okay? You also need to know high concentration, low concentration of solar radiation. If you're using that language and getting those words into a paragraph, you're going to do pretty well, okay? So what we'll do now is we will jump into an exam question and I'll model an example of what I would have done had I got that in an exam question, okay? Okay, so we're going to look at a question from the Edexcel Geography A, paper 1 from May 2020. If you're doing Excel B or AQA, it should still be dead useful as there's loads of exam technique in it. Here's our exam question. So if you've watched previous videos, you need to bug the question. Box the command word, underline the keywords, and glance at the marks. I'd pause the video and I'd do that now. Okay, once you've done that, you'll have seen that the command word is evaluate. So we're saying if it's going to be a very significant factor, a somewhat significant factor, or an insignificant factor. All right? We need to be making a judgment, basically. Then we need to underline the keywords. So we're going to have climate, influence, distribution, and ecosystem. Okay? So basically it's asking you what factors, apart from climate, influence ecosystems. We then glance the marks, see it's an 8 marker, so we know it's going to be one of those longer essay questions. 2 paragraphs should do. And then we also see there's no spag involved. So we look down here and we see that global atmospheric circulation is a factor that is accepted, as it does massively impact the location of our ecosystems. So, this is the overview of what our paragraph should look like, or our essay should look like by the end of it. Intro, which should really be a definition from the question. This is about ecosystems, so I'd go with that. A paragraph that agrees with the statement, a paragraph that disagrees with the statement, and a conclusion. Okay, we are not looking at 8 markers, so we're just going to focus on our agree paragraph. And maybe in a future video I will do an 8 marker and show you how I approach them. So, this is really important, probably the most important bit. When we're writing a paragraph, we've got to build it using our connectors, because our connectors will end up being our skeleton. They'll give us that structure. So we see here, we're saying highly significant, so that's evaluation. We then insert the point before moving on to the causes, case study, effects or impacts, and finish off with some balance, okay? So I'm going to show you how to use these connectives to answer our question. So, one highly significant factor is atmospheric cells. So I've done two things there in the first 7 words. I've pointed out that it's a highly significant factor. That's evaluation. And then I've said it's about atmospheric cells, which is my point, meaning that everything that follows must be about atmospheric cells in this paragraph. Moving on to because. So this is our causes. Because it influences the movement of air, causing sustained areas of high pressure and low pressure. Yep, so I'm saying this Hadley cell process causes high pressure, low pressure. Perfect. For example, the equator experiences significant rainfall due to rising air, warm air, in the Hadley cells. So we know rising air causes precipitation from our diagram. With the Amazon rainforest receiving, on average, around 3,000 millimeters of precipitation per year. So I've got some data in, I've got a named example, so my case study is good. Again, you don't want to spend too much time writing about your case study, just one sentence is really enough in this paragraph. Now we move on to the effects. This means that ecosystems like rainforests thrive in these areas. So again, I'm using words from the question like ecosystems to remind the examiner I'm still on topic. Whilst deserts form in the dry zones where air descends. As a result, the location of atmospheric circulation plays a crucial role. So again, I'm saying crucial, which means it's really important. So evaluation, a crucial role in shaping the climate of a region. However, so now I'm going to do a little bit of balance. However, other factors such as local geography and human activity can also influence ecosystem distribution. I'm literally using distribution and ecosystems there to remind the examiner I'm still talking about the question. Yet, it still remains a highly significant factor. So again, I'm ending with evaluation as well. Okay? So, you can see how I've taken my point and I've built it using my skeleton, which is my connectives. Okay? I think that gets 100%. I also think that maybe that's more A-levels. So if you're only writing something 70% of that, or 60% even, you're still going to do pretty well, okay? But remember, guys, the key advice, use the connectives, use your language, and you're going to do very, very well. Okay, I hope you found it useful, and tune in next time.